Hello, everyone. Hi, Matthew. It's
Good
so
morning.
great to see you. Wow, yeah.
Thank you.
Good morning.
It's
What
still
time?
very dark here in California.
What time at your place is?
It's 5:30 in the morning, and I've only had one cup of
What
coffee
time is
so
it?
far.
I'm so sorry. I'm so grateful that you joined this conference. I'm so happy at the same time. We've met a year ago, and then I recognized that I need to find the opportunity to give a chance to top 500
Yes.
innovators to learn from you. And now we have this chance. So thank you so much once again. Also that you woke up so early. It's really big thing. Well, let me introduce Matthew Willcox. Matthew runs behavioral science insights and choice architecture consultancy. He's one of the pioneers of the application of behavioral insights to marketing and founded the Institute of Decision Making in 2009 as a bridge between marketers and scientists who study human behavior. Matthew has over 25 years brand strategy experience in Europe, Asia, and North America, and has helped organizations such as Levi Strauss, Electronic Arts, Unilever, Nestlé, Shell, GlaxoSmithKline get their products chosen, and in the process has won 8 Effie Awards. He has also acted as an expert on behavior change for the US Food and Drug Administration anti-smoking programs for consumer, B2B, and healthcare companies, and for development organizations tackling stubborn problems in the area of sexual and reproductive health. Sounds fantastic, isn't it? Well, Matthew, we can't wait for your presentation. Are you ready?
I am very ready. Thank you for the great introduction, Patricia. One of the reasons my consultancy is called The Business of Choice is because I've written a book called The Business of Choice, which really sort of takes the learnings of many behavioral scientists. It was written over a period of 10 years, recently updated, to bring a practical aspect to the work of behavioral scientists. So really it's designed to, the purpose of the book is to sort of show people how these great ideas and methods that have been uncovered by thousands of behavioral scientists around the world can actually be used in practical ways in business, in marketing, and indeed perhaps in innovation as well.
Thank you. I leave with small steps. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So thank you everybody for joining. I'm having my first cup of coffee of the day. You will probably be close to having your first drink of the day. But it's a delight to be here, and it's the new reality that we work in, that we will be doing more of these things. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how that might affect some aspects of behavior as well. So as I mentioned, now my slides are not coming up, so give me a couple of seconds while I fix that. There we have them. Okay. As I mentioned, my company is called The Business of Choice. I've written a book called The Business of Choice, and I am very much focused on understanding the hows and whys human beings make the choices they do, why we do what we do, and just as importantly, why we don't do what we don't do. And that latter question, that idea of people not doing things that perhaps they would be to their advantage, or you can't understand why they can't do, is one of the most important things for us to understand in the field of innovation. So, but first of all, this is a difficult time for the world in so many ways. And, but I guess one question to ask is it a difficult time for innovation? And I know a number of the speakers have talked about this, about the difficulties of getting teams together, budgets shrinking, but actually in some ways, times of crisis are a real focus for innovation. And I just wanted to talk about that a bit. So perhaps I've always been interested in aviation history, perhaps because my birthday, the 17th of December, you can all send me cards. The 17th of December was the day when the Wright brothers flyer took off in North Carolina. And you can see that sort of, the very primitive plane that it was, it managed to fly about the two lengths of a football field and reached a speed of 48 kilometers per hour. That was in 1903. 11 years later, at the beginning of the First World War, the military started adopting aeroplanes, and this is the Voisin 3, a Voisin 3, a French plane, which was the first plane to shoot down an enemy plane in combat. And as you can see, it's not that much different in terms of, I mean, there's nothing there that makes you say, wow, apart from perhaps the wheels. There was a massive innovation that they had from about in 1903. Now, there were more advanced planes than this, but the point I'm making is that in those 11 years before the beginning of the First World War, the innovation crept along. By the end of the First World War, we have planes like this. This is the Air Côte de Havilland 4, which first flew in 1916 and was the fastest, or one of the fastest, two-seater planes in the First World War. And this was capable of speeds of 230 kilometers per hour. Now, sadly, and you in Poland are very aware of this, of course, war blighted the European continent again 21 years after the end of the First World War. But if you look at the planes that were populating many of the air forces, they were not that dissimilar from the planes at the end of the First World War. And then if we go on to 5 years later, jet fighters were appearing. This is the Gloucester Meteor, a British plane that was capable, it nearly got to speeds of 1,000 miles an hour, and did its test flight in 1944. So times of crisis actually accelerate, they focus innovation. And we're in a time of crisis. So in some ways, yes, it's not a great time for innovation, but in other ways, it is a very great time for innovation. And a friend of mine has written a book about this, and it's well worth reading. Anybody who's in the field of innovation should get it. I would love it if you got my book, but I have to say this is one that you should probably get first. It's called A Beautiful Constraint. The friend of mine is Mark Barton. He wrote it with Adam Morgan. They're both partners of a firm called Eat Big Fish, which is a consultancy that works with challenger brands. And the idea of A Beautiful Constraint is that it is the constraints that can fire creativity. It is the constraints that you have that can actually lead you to make innovation leaps. As they say on the cover, it's a way to transform your limitations into advantages. And limitations can become advantages. But innovation is, of course, very tough, whether we have difficult times or plain times when the sailing is very plain. It is not easy to innovate successfully. And one of the most misleading things ever said that relates to innovation is attributed to Ralph Waldo Emerson, which is, he's said to have said, build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a pathway to your door. Now, I've analyzed the lists of the Fortune 500 and Forbes billionaires, and I have not found a single mousetrap patent in any of them. It's very clear that actually building stuff better is not just the route to success, or is not a route in itself to success. And there are some reasons for that. There's a very interesting paper that, again, if you're in the field of innovation, is a must read. It's by John Gorville, who's a Harvard professor. And it's called The Curse of Innovation, Why Innovative New Products Fail. And he says new products fail to gain market acceptance at a stunning rate, from 40 to 90% across product categories. Other people would suggest it is even more. This failure rate is even greater than that 40 to 90. Well, certainly that 40% sounds very, very much on the low end. An article by Vilma says 11 out of 12 startups fail, and 19 out of 20 product innovations fail. So innovation is tough. Why? Well, there's many reasons. And the Vilma article goes on to quote a raft of them: too long development times, risk-averse cultures, not selecting the right ideas. But actually, there's one which I'm going to talk about today because it really overlaps with the work that I do and the work I've been doing over the last 20 years. There's one thing we frequently underestimate as innovators, which is how our innovations align with how human beings naturally make choices, how human beings instinctually make choices. John Gorville says, why do innovative new products fail? The answer may lie in consumers' inherent resistance to behavior change. a resistance that developers do not anticipate. The good thing for us, for me particularly, given the work I do, is that we now understand more about human instinct and choice and behavior than we have done before, thanks to work of thousands of behavioral scientists. I've shown just 3 here. One is Daniel Kahneman, the one who's got his hand like this, Nobel Prize winner, the person who really sort of named and discovered a thing called prospect theory and loss aversion that we will talk about later on. Nobel Prize winner in 2002. Sheena Iyengar, the scientist at Columbia University, wrote an excellent book called The Art of Choosing. And then on the far side, we have Richard Thaler, another Nobel laureate who won the Nobel Prize for Economic Sciences in 2017. But the work, not just of these people, but of their students, of the people who came before them, and now, as I estimate, probably about 10 to 12,000 behavioral scientists around the world, helps us understand more about how human beings choose. My book's called The Business of Choice, but the subtitle, which I hope you can see there, is how human instinct influences everyone's decisions. And this is the thing that innovators often do not take into account when they are developing and bringing their innovations to market. This picture says a lot about human behavior. There is a perfectly good path that you can see going in the right angle. But what's happened is, of course, that path wasn't good enough for human nature. People instinctually took a shortcut across it, as you can see from the muddy path. Why? Well, for 2 reasons. One is because it's quicker, and the second is because it saves energy. But how much quicker and how much energy does it really save? I did some calculations, and it saves about 1/8 of an M&M in terms of energy, and probably about 0.8 seconds. Now, but still, we're instinctually drawn to take those shortcuts. And the way we take decisions works the same way. We use instinctual cognitive shortcuts. And I'm going to talk about some of these and how they might affect innovation in general, but also how they might specifically be of interest to us in these COVID times. So the reason we use these shortcuts, though, is because our brain is an energy hog. Even though it's only 2% of the size of our body, and some people it may be a bit more or less, probably less in my case, it uses about 20% of our energy. And so anything it can do using intuitive shortcuts rather than thinking everything through in detail is really a way for the brain to respond quickly to stimulus and situations and to actually do it in an energy efficient way. And there are many of these shortcuts. They're called cognitive biases and heuristics. There's over 100 of them. And, you know, some of them are very obscure, but 100 of anything, actually, to be honest, is not useful when it comes to developing strategies. And so one of the things I've done is filtered this down and come up with a framework, which I'm going to talk to you about very quickly. I call this framework the behavioural lens. And this is why this talk is looking at innovation through the behavioural lens. And the behavioural lens is LENS, stands for 4 things. The L is how loss and how humans instinctively avoid loss or the prospect of loss in its many forms, which is pivotal when you're bringing innovation to market. Another is ease. E is for ease in this case. We're drawn to the path of least physical and cognitive effort. N stands for now or later. Timing is everything, and smaller sooner beats larger later. Humans intuitively will prefer a smaller reward now to a larger reward in the future. This is a huge issue when you're developing innovations in healthcare, when you're developing innovations about environmental factors, where the reward is distant and the benefit is big, but it's not visible to people. It is not something that they can recoup now. And the S stands for social and self, which is how the behavior of others, whether it is simply social proof that we see or feel that many other people are doing something, or it is our expectations of others, or our expectations of what they expect of us. Now, today, because we have a limited amount of time, and I better speed up because I've eaten into some of that already. Today, I'm only going to talk about the first 2, loss and ease. Let's start with loss. So Sparky Anderson was an American baseball coach, and he said losing hurts twice as bad as winning feels good. And he was exactly, well, he was pretty right, because the early experiments of Kahneman and Tversky showed that the psychological impact of a loss was about twice of the behavioral impact. So the impact a loss would have on our behavior of $100 was about twice the impact that a gain of $100 would have on our behavior. So losses, the prospect of a loss affects behavior more than the prospect of a similar sized gain. And it's really important to understand that. It sounds counterintuitive, but when you think about it and just think about, you know, how all of us have experienced that gut feeling, that feeling in our gut when we're faced with the prospect of a loss. I'm going to talk about an experiment that I think elegantly demonstrates this. It was done by Tatiana Homanoff in the Washington, D.C. area, I think about probably close on to 10 years ago now, a bit less than that. And what she did was she looked at how people's behavior that related to reusable shopping bags changed when they were in a situation where there was no incentive at all. They could use a reusable bag, and if they didn't have one, they would just be given a bag by the supermarket. Or when they were in a situation where the supermarket would charge them 5 cents for using that bag, or when they were in a situation where the supermarket would actually sort of give them a reward. You bought a bag, we're going to give you 5 cents off your shopping bill. So let's see how that played out. What she found, and her colleagues found, through observing thousands of interactions of people using shopping bags in various supermarkets, was that when there was no incentive in place, about 13% of people used a reusable bag. So that's a good baseline for us to take into account. Now, when there was a bonus, when people were given a positive, they were given a gain of 5 cents. You bought your own bag, we're going to take 5 cents off your bill or give 5 cents to charity. It did go up a bit, but it didn't go up very much. I normally ask audiences to guess this, but it's more difficult on a video conference to do that. It went up to 15.4%. Yet, when they were faced with a tax, when they were charged 5 cents for the bag that they didn't bring, reusable bag use went up to 44.2%. I think it's a powerful example of how a loss frame can actually have a bigger effect on behavior, even when the loss is a pretty small one, 5 cents. But I think it's really important for us as marketers and innovators. Yes, loss aversion can be a very powerful way to change behavior. It can be a powerful way to get people to do something by offering this prospect of a loss if they don't do it. But it doesn't always work. It doesn't work, for example, if the loss is a long way away. Then we tend to sort of think about what we can have now. And I think as well, the most instructive thing about loss aversion for those of us in business and those of us in innovation is actually not how we might use it to get people to do the things we want them to do, but how it might be stopping them from doing the things that we need them to do. Every choice, every change of behavior comes with the potential for a loss. And this is a critical thing for innovation. I'm going to give you an example. A number of years ago, I was at a conference, talking at a conference in Addis Ababa, and one of the speakers who was speaking with me talked about a situation they had been in Southern Africa, which was they'd been working with an NGO that bought water to a village that didn't have water. In this village, what would happen is the teenage kids would go every day and bring water to the village. It would take them a couple of hours. And so everybody agreed it would be a good thing, or sorry, most people thought it would be a good thing to put a water pipe in to save people having to do that, to bring water to the village. And so after they'd done that, after about a week, somebody sabotaged the water pipe. They fixed it. After about another week, somebody sabotaged it again. And they fixed it. But they thought, what's going on? And there was an anthropologist in the village, and she kind of figured it out. She realized that what was happening was that somebody had felt a loss. Even though it seemed like a gain for everybody, this group was losing. The teenagers, the adolescents who would every day have the free time to go together, to socialize, to make friends, to kindle romance, whatever they were doing, actually sort of felt aggrieved and had a loss because of this new water pipe coming in, and it was they who were sabotaging it. And so in every change, there is a loss that someone will feel somewhere. Ron Heifetz, who is a professor at the Harvard Kennedy School, actually kind of says this very nicely, because we talk about people being change averse and we say how difficult it is to get change. He says, no, what people resist is not change per se, but loss. It is the loss that lies in that change. And so when I do my workshops, what I do is I get people to think about what might people be losing by adopting the behavior that you want them to adopt. And I've got this list now of a couple of hundred words. Here's an example of it. I mean, there are obvious ones like time or money, but sometimes it's a sense of immortality. One of the things we found in a project in Kenya was that one of the things that stopped people from taking HIV medication was it kind of made them feel iller than they thought they were. It made them feel that they were going to die, and they didn't want that reminder. It can attack one's self-concept. Sometimes when we ask people to change their behavior, it actually affects their self-concept in some way. Someone may have mastery over a certain approach. They may have mastery over a certain interface or software, and if you get them to change that, they lose that. And you have to understand that when you're trying to move people to a new platform. It could be excitement. If you ask people to drive slowly, sure, they are losing time by driving slowly, but they're also losing perhaps a sense of excitement. I love this example from Sweden, which is the speed camera lottery. And what they did in Stockholm was they set up speed cameras that basically would fine you if you drove past them going faster than the speed limit, but all of the cars who drove more slowly below the speed limit then got entered into a lottery to win the amount of money that all of the people had put in that deposit by driving more quickly. And I think that was clever because it created some fun, but it also replaced the missing excitement with some new excitement. I'm a great fan of Marie Kondo. Marie Kondo, many of you may know, is a Japanese global sensation. And as I often say, she's the only person, I think, in the world who has managed to become a superstar by showing people how to fold their clothes, made millions for it. But Marie Kondo tells a story that when she was a teenage girl, she was trying to figure out what she should be throwing out. And this was incredibly stressful for her. Now, people who know about loss aversion would say, maybe that's not surprising. You're basically getting rid of stuff. You're losing things. And the stress of deciding what to throw out actually led Marie Kondo to faint. So she faints, she's lying semi-conscious, and she has an epiphany. She says she has a vision. And when she woke up, she realized that what she had been doing, she says, I was asking the wrong question. By the way, that's a great thing for any of us to do, is to think, are we asking the right questions? But she says, I was asking the wrong question. I was asking, what should I throw out? When what I should have been asking is, what should I keep? And that's a great reframe. What she did, and how she's now helped millions of people around the world, is by reframing that thing of throwing out and taking the loss aversion, taking the loss out of it, and focusing on what you might keep. Another thing that affects us is part of loss aversion is status quo bias. That affected also kind of people trying to throw things out. We have a natural preference for the current state of affairs. Anything that moves from that is potentially a loss in some way. And I think sometimes we're driven as marketers and innovators to try to get people to change a lot. It's like we've got to get people to completely reject the old product and move to our new product. And sometimes that's possible. Sometimes that's all you can do. But in many cases, that is probably not an approach that aligns with human nature. I'm going to give you an example. So let's say a Polish brewer approached me and said, you know, I want to import my beer into the United States. I want it to be successful. And I know that there are many people who drink Pilsner Urquell. It's a well-known European Pilsner that people seem to love in America. What we need to do is get them to stop drinking Pilsner Urquell and get them to drink Slasky Jasny. I probably didn't pronounce that correctly, but I hope you'll forgive me for that. But that would not be the right approach, because what you're asking people to do is to make a complete change and potentially a total loss. But some interesting research by Amos Scher and Ilana Ritov that was published in Management Science in 2014 suggests that if you actually, instead of getting people, if you say to people, I want you to give me those 6 Pilsner Urquells and I will give you 6 Slasky Jasnys, they're very unlikely to do that. However, if you say, what I want to do is trade your 6 Pilsner Urquells for 4 Pilsner Urquells and 2 Slasky Jasnys, then they are more likely to do that. So again, that's an important thing for us to think about innovators, is sometimes it's about looking for small behavior change rather than total behavior change. So what are the implications of this in COVID times? I think, first of all, the first thing is a slide I skipped over, which is back here, which is, the first thing is, please don't just think about what people might gain from adopting your innovation, but think about what they might lose. That is the macro thing to remember from this part of the presentation. But in COVID times, it does change things, and a couple of things may loosen, may make innovation, the appetite for innovation, a little bit easier. So the first is the status quo of the world has been disrupted, and in many human behaviors, so status quo bias may also be weakened. So looking for areas where people's behavior has changed already may yield opportunities. We talked about the importance of loss and understanding how loss may be stopping people from doing things, but actually some of the losses felt from changing pre-COVID behaviors, like flying across the Atlantic 7 times a year, which unfortunately I used to do, they may not register as strongly as those behaviors become more distant. So the loss of whatever the benefits of that behavior, as they fade in our memories, means that getting people to adopt new behaviors to replace that activity may not be as difficult as it was. And then I think a thing to be cautious of is that be wary of using COVID as a way of raising the prospect of loss. I talked earlier on about how when losses are big and long-term, human beings have a great ability to deflect those. First of all, if it's long-term, well, it doesn't affect me, or even if I say I will do something about it, I probably won't, because there are things that give me a reward in the short term. And the other thing is, if things are big and scary, we tend to think, often incorrectly, that they won't happen to us. So at the beginning, I said we were going to talk about L and E, and so I'm quickly going to talk about how ease affects behavior, how it affects innovation, and how indeed it might also have some impact as we live in these times. Richard Thaler, who we talked about earlier on, the behavioral economist who wrote Nudge with Cass Sunstein, wrote another book called Misbehaving and won the Nobel Prize for Economic Sciences in 2017, says he's learned 2 things, he says, in his work as a practitioner. And one of the most important one is, if you want to encourage someone to do something, make it easy, make that thing easy. And even though that doesn't sound like a note of a genius, actually it is something we forget so much. It is so easy to let complexity sneak into the interfaces we develop, to the stages that we require someone to register for something. A friend of mine said, Lloyd Glenn, puts this well. He says, I like choices that make themselves. And what he's saying there is the easiest choices are ones you don't really have to think about. It is one where you don't have to weigh up all the options. You still feel you're making a choice, but it is so easy the choice almost makes itself. And I think, going back to John Gorville, the Harvard University professor who talks about the curse of innovation, he uses this example. And we may, as innovators, find some of these opportunities in current times as some choices have been taken away from people. So here you have $2 coins, a tale of $2. One is the dollar coin of the United States of America. The other is from Canada. The United States of America has failed abysmally trying to get people to adopt dollar coins. There are very, very many reasons for it. One is that they know that the public are not that willing to accept dollar coins. And so they persist. What they have done, I mean, they've pretty much given up on it now, but about 12 times they tried to launch dollar coins and kept paper banknotes in circulation. And basically what happened was they didn't change the status quo. People kept using the paper banknotes to the point where the dollar coins were not recognized. People didn't think they were real. They really have just, you find them occasionally, but they have not been a success, which is a pity because dollar coins are a more economic way. They last longer, even though they cost more to produce initially than banknotes. In Canada, they launched the dollar coin, I think, in 1986. And the dollar coin, they call it the loonie there. That is the bird there is a species of bird called, I'm a bird watcher, is a common loon or a Gavia imma, or diver, as we call it in Europe, in English-speaking countries in Europe. And the loon is, the coin was introduced, but what they started doing, even though they knew the public resisted the idea of coins, is they bought paper bills out of circulation. To the extent that it was actually so, and it was so successful, they did two things. One is they bought out another coin, the $2 coin, which is called the toonie. So they have the loonie, which is the dollar coin, and the toonie, Looney Toonies. And they also were able to create savings of $70 million, which was used to fund the Winter Olympics, I think, in 1988. So, you know, look for opportunities where people don't have the choices they used to have, because that, again, makes a pathway to accepting innovations easier. Another thing that makes innovation easier is a thing called piggybacking. So piggybacking is when you carry somebody around on your back, well, or when you get carried around on the back of someone. And it's a great technique in behavior change because it relates to something people are doing already. So it's easy and there's no loss to it. One example comes from the from Innovations for Poverty Action, which is a group that works in the developing world. And they a number of years ago reported that 2 million children die of diarrheal disease each year, and contaminated water is often to blame. Simply treating water with chlorine could substantially reduce this toll. But getting people to treat their water with urine, because remember, we're not talking about countries where there is huge infrastructure. This is something the households would have to do themselves. Proves to be very difficult. People forget they don't have the chlorine to hand. They put it under the sink and they just don't think to do it. Somebody said to me, 2 seconds and 2 steps is all it takes to forget to do something. So they came up with a great solution, which was this. Rather than doing the chlorination at home, they put chlorine dispensers at the places where people got water. They made it difficult for people to forget, but they also piggybacked the chlorination on the act of getting the water in the first place. That was the first piece of genius. The second piece of genius is they made an invisible behavior a visible behavior. So now, when people came to get water, you could see that kind of the thing you were expected to do, and the socially acceptable thing was to put chlorine in your water. And this has been one of the most successful water chlorination programs. Another example comes from Qatar. And they wanted to, the health authority in Qatar wanted to improve the amount of people coming and getting diabetes tests. Now, one of the problems with diabetes tests and many other blood tests is that you have to get people to fast for a period of time before they take that test. And people forget, they ruin it, they have a cup of coffee, they have some breakfast cereal or something, or the idea of doing that is so much to put them off that they don't even embark in the process in the first place. So, but what the health authority realized is there was a behavior and a place they could piggyback on. During Ramadan, Muslims fast. And so they worked with the mosque and set up a testing facility in the foyer of the mosque. So you were doing two things that made this easier. You were piggybacking on a behavior that people were doing. They were fasting for Ramadan, and you were piggybacking on a place because they were collecting in the mosque. And again, you created a social sense about this thing. An invisible behavior again becomes a visible one. A final area, which to me is a very important one for people in innovation about ease, is the idea of anchoring. So the idea of anchoring is that humans make choices based on what they know already. And in this famous experiment that was done by Daniel Kahneman and his partner, Amos Tversky, they set up these wheels that you see, and they asked people a question, but they said before, they asked the question, what % of UN members are African countries? And then they asked them to spin the wheel. But what they didn't tell people was that the wheel was fixed. So half of the people who took part in this study, the wheel stopped at 10. The other half, the wheel stopped at 65. And this was randomly assigned. And what they found was that when the wheel stopped at 10, the thing that people were doing immediately before answering the question, what % of UN members are African countries? The mean answer, the average answer, was 25%. But when the wheel stopped at 65, that went up to 45%. Actually, the real answer is closer to 25%. But the interesting thing here is how information you have before, knowledge you have before, experience you have before shapes the choices that you make and the judgments that you make. A neuroscientist explained this to me because he said, you know, the human brain doesn't look at something new, or every time it comes across something unique, it doesn't say, or innovative, it doesn't say, what is this? Actually, what our brains do is say, what is this like that I already know? So thinking about that, it's like, and the reason goes back to that pathway we talked about how the brain is always looking for easy ways to make the right choices or good enough choices. And the reasoning here is that it is easier for the brain to think, what is this like that I already know, than it is for the brain to create an entirely new mental model. If you were to describe a zebra to me and you described it from the hoofs up and every detail of having 4 legs and a medium-sized neck and long ears and has stripes, I've got to think quite a lot about what you're talking about. But if you say to me, it's kind of like a horse or a donkey with stripes on it, then I very quickly and clearly get what you're talking about. And this is important for us as innovators. My book won an award in 2016, the American Marketing Association Award, which I was co-winner of with Itamar Simonson, who's a Stanford professor who'd written a book with Emmanuel Rosen called Absolute Value. And one of the things he says in this book is, that's just the way we humans are. We're cognitive misers who are addicted to comparisons. We can't look at a dishwasher and determine its value or how well it will clean the dishes, but place 2 dishwashers in front of us and we will instantly start comparing their features and prices. We're addicted to comparisons. That is how we make choice. We make choice more often than not by comparing things. And this is important because how do you compare things? Well, actually, you could say the differences are important. Yes, they are. But what qualifies you for comparison is not the differences, but the similarities. The big thing we have to think about is what is our innovation similar to? Rather than telling people that it's completely different from things, is there something it's similar to? And how will that actually, so that we can create a frame of reference based on that. You will recognize this device on the left-hand side of the page, a Segway, launched with much aplomb, I think probably 20 plus years ago. Never really very successful. You see the people going around tours of cities on them. Really the only time people use these is as a novelty, and they've ceased production about 5 years ago. This, on the other hand, is something I see more and more of every day. I cycle a lot, and I get overtaken every day by somebody on an electric bicycle. And I would suggest that one of the reasons that this is successful is because it fits into a framework we know about, to something we recognize, as opposed to being different from anything we might know. So in COVID times, how might we think about this? How might we think about this notion of ease? Well, I think the first thing I talked about, as I talked about with the coins, is old choices have been taken out of the equation. So let's kind of think about where choices have been taken out of the equation and see if the things that we offer might actually fill that vacuum. A second thing is that people are adopting new behaviors because they have to. And recently adopted behaviors bring opportunities for comparisons. You know, this notion of comparisons, venture capitalists will tell you that one of the things that people when they pitch, they say, this is the Uber of diaper delivery. This is the Airbnb of office space. People are constantly, you know, when they're framing their pitches, they are using comparisons to do that. So what recently adopted behaviors bring opportunities for comparisons? And finally, recently any behavior is an opportunity for piggybacking, and we do have people adopting new behaviors. So where might there be opportunities to use that for piggybacking for your innovations? So my overall message here is that if you can understand how human nature, how human instinct shapes people's choices, then that will allow you to create innovations that align with how people naturally choose. And the thing I always say about innovations is it's not how great the technology is. A great innovation can be judged by how well it works with the human brain. And if you do this, you have the chance to make adopting your innovation a natural choice. So thank you very much indeed. I've enjoyed talking. I think I've got 2 minutes and 12 seconds left, and here's Patricia back to do the outro. If you would like to contact me about any of this, my email is here, and you can get it from Patricia and the team. It's matthew@thebusinessofchoice.com. If we have time for any written questions, I'm happy to answer them, but it may be that we have to do it via email. Patricia, you can guide people from here.
Of course. Thank you, Matthew, so much. It was absolutely interesting, and I believe that not only to me but also to all the audience. And yeah, that we don't have more time, but I thought that this application around the world helps us also to collect some memories, so we can take a common picture. So I believe that it would be nice to have one. So now
I'll look at the camera.
Now I'm going to send you something what it's called group file. So you just need to agree, and we will have all a common picture, and you can share it on social media. So now I'm sending to you a message. Start group fee.
Where is that? Oh yes, got it. Well,
so it's funny and it looks really nice, and so so positive, and I believe that it's a nice.
Wow,
nice
five
memory.
people have done it already.
5, yeah.
I think we need a few more. I think we need at least
30. Yes. We will wait like 2 minutes and just agree as we did, and thanks to this we will have a common picture. So this application allows us to have some fun. Even we can add some exercises when we are tired, or a nice jazz music. So it's absolutely a new kind of experience. I like it. We have 11, 12. Come on, guys. Let's take common picture. Then you can send in application will send it on your email, and also you can share it on Facebook as well as LinkedIn, I believe. Okay, 1 minute and we finish. 13 people.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you that you are with us. Okay. Thank you all. Next presentation is a presentation of Molly Nagler from PepsiCo. I highly recommend it to you. And also, final session, it's a networking. So absolutely, you should try to go there to meet some people. So now you can save your our common photo and share it whenever you want, whenever you want. So thank you all to be here with us, and if you have some time, just go to see Molly and then to network. Bye bye.